Okay, welcome everybody to the Greater Travelers Rest Chamber of Commerce Wednesday webinar series. We are endeavoring to do one every Wednesday, and so far we've got a pretty good lineup as we head into November. So I am kicking off our October 14th, 2020 with Did I Say That? Recognizing Microaggressions and Their Impact on the Workplace. So this webinar is going to be focused on bringing awareness of the negative impact that subtle unintentional comments or actions toward members of a marginalized group can actually have on other people in the workplace. So what we're going to cover today is, if I can get my slides to move, there we go. We're going to first talk about what microaggressions are. We're going to share some examples of different types of microaggressive behavior that could occur both in personal and in the workplace. We're going to discuss a basic understanding of why these are harmful. And we're also going to talk a little bit about how you can respond to them in a positive and effective manner. And when I first started putting together this presentation, it was very much a thing of self-awareness for me, because realizing that I was actually guilty of some of these microaggressions. So it's going to hopefully be a little eye-opening for you, and also help you be able to recognize them within your own workplace and know how to address them. So what are microaggressions? So these are subtle verbal and nonverbal slights, insults, indignities, and denigrating messages that are directed toward an individual due to their group membership, often automatically and unconsciously. Usually it's committed by well-intentioned folks who are unaware of the hidden messages that are actually being communicated. And you can actually put microaggressions in 3 different groups. The first is micro insults, which are verbal and nonverbal environmental communications that subtly convey rudeness and insensitivity that demean a person's heritage or identity. So there are statements or behavior that you sometimes don't even realize that you're doing. So an example could be, you might tell an Asian American that he or she speaks good English as a compliment. However, in reality, such a statement can actually be offensive to Asian Americans, implying that they don't speak clearly. Instances like this can be especially upsetting to Asian Americans who don't speak any other language besides English, or whose families have been in the US for 3 or more generations. So I have a video to share with you, and it's actually meant to be kind of comedy, but in the same aspect, it gives you a little clearer picture on what a micro insult can be.
Hi there.
Hi.
Nice day, huh?
Yeah, finally, right?
Where are you from? Your English is perfect.
San Diego. We speak English there.
Oh, where are you from?
Well, I was born in Orange County, but I never actually lived there.
I mean before that.
Before I was born.
Yeah, like, well, where are your people from?
Well, my great-grandma was from Seoul.
Korean. I knew it. I was like, she's either Japanese or Korean, but I was leaning more towards Korean.
Amazing.
I'm Shastina. There's a really good teriyaki barbecue place near my apartment. So I actually really like kimchi.
Cool. What about you? Where are you from?
San Francisco.
But where are you from?
No, I'm just American.
Really? You're Native American?
No, just regular American. Oh, well, I guess my grandparents are from England.
Oh, well. Oh, Governor! What's all this then? Dropping the ball to you. Let's go, sporty! Double, toil and trouble! Mind the gap! Beware, Jack the Ripper! Bloody hell! Pip, pip! Cheerio! I think your people's fish and chips are amazing.
You're weird.
Really? I'm weird? Must be a Korean thing.
So again, obviously that was a kind of a jokey kind of way to show it, but it's just a perfect example of how that can just be something where you think you're just having a regular conversation, and it's not anything that you would actually find to be offensive. And in reality, it actually is. So very, very interesting to think about that, because I've done that before. And you, again, may be thinking that it's not offensive in any way, but it actually could be. And then you've got the more serious micro assaults. And micro assaults are overt forms of discrimination in which people deliberately behave in discriminatory ways, but they don't intend to offend someone, or they think that their actions aren't noticed or harmful. And they can be experiences similar to like old-fashioned discrimination that existed in earlier times, but different in that people may not openly proclaim their biases. So an example could be when someone says, "That's so gay." To connote that something is weird, or that the person or is aware of the words that they chose, but they may not realize that using that kind of language is considered homophobic, and it can offend LGBTQ people. So similarly, when a comedian makes a racial joke or a racial slur, and then he or she just says, ends it with, "I was just joking," or something along those lines, it's a way of denying the prejudice. So these are a little bit more deliberate. It could be, the Confederate flag, swastikas. It could be a racial slur, an epithet. It could be a very conscious, or sometimes not, but usually these are intentional, and sometimes followed by the "I'm just joking." So micro assaults are definitely a little more serious. Microinvalidation are communications that subtly exclude, negate, or nullify the thoughts, feelings, or experimental reality of a person or color. And I think something that comes up a lot now is of course, you have the Black Lives Matter movement, but you have a lot of people who also counter that with All Lives Matter. And the problem with that is that what you're doing is negating the thoughts, feelings, and the reality of Black people through the Black Lives Matter by saying, "Oh, all lives matter." So these are verbal statements that deny, negate, or undermine the realities of members of various target groups. For example, when a white person tells a person of color that racism doesn't exist, he or she is invalidating or denying that person of color's racial reality. Similarly, when someone tells a woman that she's being too sensitive, or an LGBTQ person that they should stop complaining, it's invalidating the actual reality of that person's discrimination that exists in their lives. So it's called microinvalidation. So that can happen as well. And again, it's inadvertent. I've expressed the "all lives matter." I thought that I was being less racist by assuming that everybody of every color mattered. And that's not that that's not true, but you're invalidating the reality of what someone else has gone through. So that's a microinvalidation. So those are the three different types. Now, some of it can be very much, I used a few examples here, and a couple of these are actually from real live, kind of from clients that I've experienced. So letting one of their employees know, "You shouldn't come to the construction site as a young woman. You're a distraction. It's hard for us to get work done. It's not your fault. Don't take it personally. It's just the way men are, but why don't you just stay in the office and I'll check on you later." Or, "Oh my God, it's like little Mexico beneath my floors. Our new neighbors moved in and all I hear are babies crying and Latino music." And that was actually posted on Facebook. Another woman shared that she had asked a colleague to perform a simple task that was required of him. And he responded with, "Oh, it must be that time of the month, scary." And she asked him, what female hormone levels had anything to do with his ability to carry out what she'd asked him to do. And he responded with, "You sound like my wife." Or, "Only Black people would vote for Obama because he's Black." I know that sounds prejudiced, but I'm really not. Or someone started a job and was being trained, and someone said, "Don't worry about Mr. So-and-so. He's just extremely Jewish." And this was said by an employee on the first day of the location as the assistant manager. And they were trying to deal with a difficult customer who refused their help because they didn't recognize him, didn't know who he was. And the employee didn't know at the time that that new assistant manager was actually raised Jewish. So these are kind of just things that sometimes, often followed with, "I don't mean to sound prejudiced. I'm not really racist," or "I'm just joking," it is still a microaggression. And remembering that sometimes those types of things that you're posting are just not appropriate and can actually offend, hurt, or be harmful to another person. So I have another video to share with you.
Hi, Joe. Sorry I'm late for the call. I had a perfect morning, had to catch the last set.
You, sir?
Yeah, I'm at Ocean Beach pretty much all the time. You?
Totally. We'll have to go when I'm up there next week.
Hey, I'm stoked. Epic.
Are you John?
Joe? Oh, yeah. Great to meet you. I totally had you pictured different in my head.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but anyways, can I get you a cup of coffee?
Yeah, sure.
My hair looks crazy. It looks like a mess.
I don't believe it. Your hair always looks awesome. I mean, how do you do it? Do you twist it? Do you do it yourself?
Yeah, I twisted it myself.
Oh, I mean, do you mind?
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah, actually, I do mind.
all right.
But I mean, if you're really curious about it, there are like tons of YouTube videos out now about natural hair. So maybe check that out.
The reason, oh, I went to this
There's
one.
no way we were gonna make it to that date.
No, I have no idea what they were thinking. What do you do this weekend?
Going to the beach with some buddies.
Dude, sunscreen. You've already got quite the tan. Where's your family from?
Here,
No, before here, where are they from?
still here.
But before that.
A few generations from here.
Oh, sorry.
So the reason I had shared that video in particular was I actually a couple times have Black female friends whom I've actually reached out and touched their hair. And again, some of these things, these microaggressions are just a self-awareness, right? Being aware of what it is that you're doing. And one of my friends was very candid with me and said, we pet animals, not people, right? So it's those types of things that you have to have a good level of emotional intelligence and be aware of what it is that you might be doing and how it could be offensive. Now, there are some people that believe that microaggressions are brief and they're harmless. And many studies have found that microaggressions have a significant negative impact on people's mental and physical health. So for instance, a recent study found that more racial microaggressions that people of color experience, the more likely they are to also report depressive symptoms and a negative view of the world. In another study, LGBTQ participants reported that when they experienced microaggressions, they often felt depressed, anxious, and even traumatized. And other researchers have found that many other harmful effects of microaggressions, including a study that found when college students experience microaggressions, they also binge drink or develop other alcohol-related issues. And there were yet 2 other studies that found a relationship between microaggressions and intense psychological stress. So just imagine if you're experiencing these types of things on a regular basis, how that would make you feel, especially if you're already experiencing them at home or in your personal life, and then you're also experiencing those in the workplace. So again, another short video to share with you.
So I talk to people a lot about establishing a diverse and inclusive work environment and creating a culture where people feel free to be themselves, to take up space, I say, right? When I use the word take up space, I mean, if you feel passionate about a topic, you can have big gestures and be a woman or be a person of color, or, have a quiver in your voice and be a woman and not have to worry about all of the stereotypes and assumptions that will be made on you based on your gender or your race or your religious background. You can take up space and be exactly who you are, free from all of the baggage associated with the stereotypes affixed to who you are. When people use coded language about why certain groups of people can access certain resources and other folks that have concerns about other folks accessing those resources, they're usually playing into the stereotypes that are affixed to your group that you're a member of. So for me, as a Black woman, I'm angry, emotional, volatile, tardy, right? Lazy, sometimes criminal, loud, brazen. I mean, there are many, many, many stereotypes that are associated with me just based on the skin that I have, based on the gender that I was born with. Those things exist. This is not an extreme example. The loaded language associated with it is I had a conversation with Cyrilda and I was afraid. I'm afraid to go and have a conversation with Cyrilda. If I tell Cyrilda that I don't like what she did in her, in her presentation, she's gonna lash out at me. That's loaded language. Where is that coming from? Has she demonstrated that she's actually going to do anything of that nature? Or is it just because she's got big gestures? Is it just because she's got an afro that automatically elicits fear in you? Those things manifest into policy. Those feelings manifest into rules and regulations that are oppressive to people like me. And I can give you a million of those examples, but they happen all day long. And human resources has got to be charged with interrupting that, digging deeper, asking questions like, has she ever demonstrated that if you give her feedback, she's going to lash out? Has she ever demonstrated that if she works from home, she doesn't work at all? HR has got to facilitate the deeper dive into what's happening inside the person who owns and harbors those assumptions and biases. And they also got to facilitate the coming together of the two people who are from different cultures, different backgrounds, different genders, to explore where the rub is, where the discomfort is. Because if you, the person who's in power, are uncomfortable with that individual, there's probably some discomfort on the side of the person who doesn't have any power when it comes to relating to you.
So I know in that particular video, she mentions HR. So I know that my audience today is small business. So that actually will fall upon you as the manager, director, owner, because we have to look at how we're going to interact and make these types of things not be a regular occurrence within the workplace. And what struck me with the video that she just did, when she talks about the quiver in your voice, obviously being in the gender that I am in, I always remember being worried that when I went in to talk to a manager, or I went in to address something that I was passionate about, or something that I felt needed correction, I was always concerned that I was going to have that quiver in my voice, because I do get emotional. And it's very interesting after learning about this to think about the fact that you're afraid to have those conversations because of what that person might perceive, or what microaggression might be attributed to that, because you have that quiver, or you get a little tear in your eye, because for a long time, especially if I was getting feedback, that happened to me. So I just thought that was very interesting to talk about how, if you see that this is going on, or this is happening within your workplace, about intervening and being able to bring those folks together. So there are different ways that you can actually respond to microaggression. So there's three ways. There's either the passive aggressive, which is just making a sarcastic remark and rolling your eyes and moving on. Proactively, which could be yelling or having an emotional reaction, or assertively, which is where you're just going to have this calm discussion, or you're going to educate. And while other responses may be appropriate depending on the situation, the assertive approach is usually the most useful, especially in the context of work. So when we are addressing a microaggression that's directed at you, so being the recipient can be emotional, it can be stressful, and it might be tempting or even cathartic to respond passively, aggressively, or proactively in the workplace. However, the assertive approach is likely to have the best outcome and lead to a constructive conversation. So to use the assertive approach, just consider the following. Calmly address the perpetrator through the use of the word I statement. So when you said this, I felt hurt. Or an education, this hurt me because. Doing so can actually help the other party understand how their microaggression has affected you directly and in a clear and straightforward way. And consider taking the time to collect your thoughts before you address the individual. Contemplate whether it'd be more helpful to talk to them, or you could even write it in an email, or just letting the individual know what was said, how and why it hurt you. And keep in mind that saying something like "you're a racist," has the potential to make the individual completely go on the defensive, while saying what you said earlier was offensive and racially charged because has an opportunity to lead to a more productive conversation. And then finally, you need to recognize the importance of self-care. After experiencing a microaggression, you may consider reaching out to a coworker who's trusted, or a loved one, or a mental health professional to process the experience. But you can avoid accumulating negative and detrimental feelings which can harm your mental health. So remembering that self-care. So what to do as an ally. So part of being an ally in the workplace is speaking up when you witness an oppression of a marginalized group. The tips for addressing it are as same as the ones we just talked about for when it's directed at you, but with some variations. First, if you do not belong to the marginalized group, it could be harder for you to spot a microaggression. So if you think you've witnessed a microaggression, but you aren't sure, you may consider talking to a trusted coworker about the situation, especially if they were present when the comment was made. Second, if you're not a part of the group being marginalized by the comment or action, an individual may not view you as having credit to confront that microaggression. And this is where the education piece of the assertive approach could come into play. Since the microaggression didn't hurt you individually, it can be constructive to educate the individual on how the comment or the action could have been racially or discriminatorily charged, okay? And then if you've communicated one, microaggressions are common, okay? And it's not unlikely that you've committed a microaggression before, or you may do it again in the future. And as humans, we make mistakes. And in these moments, it's really helpful to maintain a growth mindset. So if you recognize that you did or you said something that could have negatively impacted a marginalized group, take responsibility for it and genuinely apologize. You could consider apologizing to the individual affected privately so you don't draw any more attention to them in what could have been an uncomfortable situation. And there may also be times where you're unaware you committed a microaggression and someone confronts you. And if this is the case, try to be open to the feedback without getting defensive. If you respond to the confrontation with a statement like, "That's not what happened, I'm not racist," you could be making the situation worse by actually minimizing the individual's experience. So instead, consider acknowledging their pain, reflecting how your comment or action was offensive, and thanking them for bringing it to your attention. Taking the conversation seriously will allow you to grow as an inclusive coworker, in turn making the workplace a more inclusive environment. So knowing these three kind of steps, so what's next for individuals, companies, and supervisors? So as individuals, we need to recognize that dismissive attitudes are harmful. We need to engage in that self-reflection that at times you may have been microaggressive in your personal and work life. Participating in any continuing education activities like y'all are doing today, and avoid making assumptions and labeling individuals. What companies can do is just foster a more inclusive and supportive environment, collaborating with groups and organizations who are committed to addressing issues of diversity and inclusion, and offering training and opportunities for continuing education and diversity workshops. And then supervisors and managers need to recognize that microaggressive instances occur on a daily basis in the workplace and that your employees are likely to experience them. Fostering an environment that encourages employees to discuss occurrences openly with you. And if and when you realize that you've made a statement or conducted a microaggressive action, that you approach the employee and acknowledge the occurrence and follow those steps that we talked about earlier. So again, that was just a brief. I could talk, I'm sure, a lot more on this particular subject, but I wanted to be cognizant of our lunch hour today. So if you'd like to know more, or you'd like to have some resources as it relates to diversity, inclusion, or workshops, or whatever the case may be, certainly let me know. I may not be the right person, but I certainly may know someone who could help. I encourage you to connect with me. I am a Chamber of Commerce member and also a secretary on the board. You'll see me from there. But you also can connect with me personally or visit my website, or if you happen to be on Twitter, certainly follow me there. So at this point, I'd like to open it up and see if there are any questions for me. If you want to turn your video and so forth back on, or just do it in the chat, whatever you're comfortable with.